everyone, I'm Benson and I'm going to be reading from Dead Les Walking. This is my latest release. As a content warning for this reading, this book is a zombie horror apocalyptic thing. Yes, I'm a writer. And so I'm going to be reading from a scene that contains some blood and gore. I decided to read from one that gave a good example of what this book contains because there's been a few questions from readers to myself and other readers about the level of gore it includes. It's really hard to answer that question as to knowing what other people will be comfortable with, so I thought I would give everyone a bit of an idea. Also, if that's not your thing, I would turn off this reading right now. We're going to be joining Joy Ayton, who is a vascular surgeon in a hospital in Perth, Western Australia. She had a really hectic night on call and has fallen asleep in a staff room somewhere and has missed the last this much of detailing the zombie virus that is overtaking it's my cat, not a zombie. Sometimes we're not sure. The zombie virus that has slowly overtaken the hospital. She is about to run into Taryn, who is someone that she has had a very good date with several weeks ago, and then she blew it afterwards for reasons unknown, mystery, and Shin, who is another nurse. So I'll start. All the corridors were empty. Approaching the entrance, Joy heard shouting, a thud. She rolled her eyes. A&E would be a mess with this shutdown and the new flu freak-out. Her hand reached out to pull open the staff access door right as it swung open and missed hitting her in the face by a hair. Bodies slammed into her and Joy reflexively grabbed hold of them to steady them and herself. A cacophony of sound hit her ears, but quickly shut off as the fire door swung shut heavily behind whoever had launched themselves through it. Heart hammering in shock, she gave a short laugh that died on her lips before it could even really make it into the world. Peering over the shoulder of the people she was clinging to, as she started to step back, her mouth dropped open. Shin? Wide-eyed, lovely Shin, who was still pretty green in this whole hospital life. Why are you covered in blood? Which she was, in a way that Joy had never been in over 15 years working in this hospital as a surgeon, and her patients could bleed. A lot. Shin shook her head, shaking like a leaf, and one of the people pressed against Joy groaned. Whoever was clinging to her shirt stepped back, holding up the other in her arms. Eye to eye with Taryn, Joy's mouth dried up. Whereas Shin had blood on the front of her shirt and her arms, still more than usual, Taryn was literally covered in blood. Her face was streaked like someone had finger painted on her, forehead covered with what were probably finger marks, and right cheek covered in blood. Even her glasses were covered in droplets. Joy looked to the person Taryn was supporting, some man she vaguely recognized from psych. He was sickly white and bleeding profusely from a wound on his neck. The hand not clinging to Taryn was weakly holding gauze against the wound, gauze that didn't seem to be doing anything. Shin, help me. Taryn craned her neck around to look at her. Shin stepped up and pulled the bleeding man's arm around her neck, reaching up with one hand to try to hold the useless gauze to his skin. Taryn, what the hell, Ayton? Taryn's voice was robotic. Together, she and Shin started walking forward, forcing Joy to step back. Her deep brown eyes burned into Joy's, so much blood on her face. We really need to run. Hearing muffled shouts coming from the door behind the trio, Joy decided not to argue. She turned and led the way down the hall, blindly leading them away from something Joy didn't know if she wanted to understand. Surely this was a nightmare. Why was the hallway empty of people? The hospital should be humming with a hectic energy. People dashing from A&E to the wards, people being pushed in wheelchairs and beds to the other blocks, harried staff with places to go, names being called over the intercom, phones ringing, beepers beeping. Not eerie silence ahead and horrible sounds behind, and absolutely no one about but two blood-covered nurses, a man who was about to bleed out, and Joy, who had no idea just what the hell was happening. Joy glanced down at her scrub top. The material was even darker than usual, where the doctor from psych had bled on her. A moaning noise reached her ears, but Joy didn't turn to check. She halted in front of an elevator and pressed the up button. They needed to get away from A&E. Arms crossed over her chest, Joy stared at the doors, willing them to open. The heavy breathing behind her mingled with the slow, rattling breaths from the hurt man. Come on, Taryn muttered. Joy hit the button again repeatedly, even though she was usually the person who rolled her eyes at those who did that. The door opened, and Joy took a fast step back in surprise, back hitting the people behind her. Oh no. Taryn sounded exhausted. Someone was at the back of the elevator, a heavily bandaged leg the only sign of what could cause him to be slumped like that. He wasn't moving. Joy took a step forward. Sarah, you all... Eden, shut up. Taryn's hand gripped her bicep and Joy tried to rip it away indignantly, turning her head. It's a patient, Taryn. You don't know. Joy scoffed, glaring into the dark eyes that were glaring right back. I do. He's clearly a patient and not well. Oi! Very Australian. Shin's voice cut through the argument and they both looked back to the elevator. The man was slowly rising, his movements uncoordinated, his head lifted up, bright red hair falling into his eyes. What the fuck? Taryn's grip on Joy's arms tightened. The man was deathly white, with a tinge to his skin that bordered on green. His eyes were bloodshot, the skin around them dark and bruised. His mouth was covered in blood, crimson handprints patterning the white of his hospital gown. Something dangled from his closed hand. Is that? Joy couldn't finish the sentence as her stomach turned. That's an intestine. Shin's voice was high-pitched, shaking. The man brought up his fist to his mouth, which opened wide as he pushed the sausage-like tube inside and chewed. Joy flashed back to watching her nephew when he was 1 year old and just learning to eat with spaghetti. The man stepped forward, eyes glued to Joy, mouth moving mechanically as he slowly ate the entire organ in his hand. A step brought him closer, his other hand rising up, fingers grasping at the air. Taryn? Joy couldn't control the near hysteria in her voice. What the fuck is going on? Kick him! Another step and he was far too close. His bloodshot eyes had widened and his nostrils were flaring as he breathed in deeply, sniffing the air. His body shuddered, as if overexcited. What? Joy couldn't turn her head away, couldn't tear her eyes from what was in front of her. Fucking kick him! Don't you dare let him leave that elevator! He's a patient. He's injured. Shin hissed, Kick him for the love of God, Joy! The man stumbled as he stepped closer, his tongue licking the blood off his hand, half the entire appendage in his mouth as he sucked it. About to be level with the door, his hand pulled out of his mouth with a wet pop as he reached it forward. Joy brought her leg up and laid a crescent kick on him. Arms and legs flew up as the force of the kick sent him flying into the back wall. He slid slowly down it, a strange growling noise coming from his throat. I'm going to stop the reading there because that was perfect. Thank you, Tipsy. That's my cat, as you all probably know. I could have kept going, but I've hit 7.5 minutes, and I think that is already past a good time limit for a reading. And also, I can't keep going after Tipsy stuck his face in the camera, and I really don't want to start again because that was hilarious. So, well, reading that aloud makes me realize how disgusting I am for thinking of it. I hope you enjoyed. If you were intrigued, I really hope you pick up a copy. It's on Amazon. You can get it in paperback. I think they're also trialing hardback, which maybe I should check out. Great. If you have any questions, let me know. Thanks, guys. Bye.